Thank you for attending this breakout session. This session is filled with powerful information to help improve your health and empower you. Radio Free 102.3 KJLH. We are you.
Well, hello, ladies. It's Cameron Green, and we are excited about the 20th Annual Women's Health Expo. We have had some incredible panels, as you've been seeing all morning long, and this, no doubt, is an important conversation. I'm so excited to be joined by a very dear friend here. We're going to talk today about the Crown Act panel. Of course, the Crown Act, standing for Create a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair, is a law that prohibits race-based discrimination, hair discrimination, I should say. First introduced in California in 2019, literally just signed into law on July 3rd. So we actually just had Crown Day. And this initiative led by the fantastic Senator Holly J. Mitchell. She, of course, the first to introduce the Crown Act, SB 188. Now, I am so pleased to be joined today by a sister who is just a powerhouse in the field. She's got so much knowledge around natural hair, and this is why this conversation is important today. Because as women of color, Black women specifically, we often are challenged in our workplaces. We often have questions about returning to our crown and glory of our natural state of hair and protective styles, and wanting to know if that's okay, or coming up with against maybe a boss who's not keen to it. So we're here to talk to an expert, a real resource today, Tracy Sanders, Esquire. She's an accomplished attorney, author, and speaker. She has established Natural Hair and the Law, which is an organization formed to provide publications, workshops, and events addressing legal issues related to natural hair in the workplace and schools. She's also author of a very fantastic book called Natural Hair in the Workplace, What Are Your Rights? This book, of course, has been featured in, there it is, in the Black Caucus of the American Library Association, Essence, the Sentinel, Natural Curly, New Growth Magazine, the Top 100 magazine. We can go on and on. She also has another book, Natural Hair Affirmations. Yes, we want to plug you, Miss Tracy, Natural Hair Affirmations. And of course, she is also the recipient of numerous awards. So who better to talk to us today about the importance of understanding the Crown Act, but also our rights, right, Tracy, as sisters. So welcome.
Absolutely.
To the Women's Health Expo, Tracy. We're so glad you joined us today.
Thank you, Cameron, KJLH, and the whole team there. You've been supportive of my brand since day one. And before we begin our conversation, I think we should start with kudos to Senator Holly Mitchell. She is truly a trailblazer. And since she initiated the legislation in California, the Crown Act, it is now a push to have that mandatory across the nation. So thank you, Holly Mitchell, for your leadership in this important cause.
Well said, Tracy. Thank you so much for mentioning that. And yes, she is indeed a trailblazer. And you know, I was just thinking, Tracy, we're in 2020 and we are having to have conversations around things that should just be understood as a right? From your lens of being an attorney in this field and dealing with natural hair cases, tell us a little bit about what you do and what you're seeing in this from that lens.
Yes, well, I think it is so important to discuss natural hair and employment discrimination. First, let's start from the current context. As you know, the whole world is changing now. I mean, now we're dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic and a lot of people are working from home. Mm-hmm. You might think, okay, so it's not an issue anymore because what's the big deal? You can work from home and it doesn't matter. But Cameron, would you agree that even if we're on Zoom, that our appearance is very important, even if it's Zoom as our workspace or live workspace? So yes, wanted to first and foremost mention that do not become comfortable, even if now, because of COVID-19, our workspaces may be virtual, remote, working from home, you're still being judged by your appearance. So that's the first issue we need to confront in terms of 2020. Second of all, it's amazing, you're right, that we're still discussing this, right? We're still dealing with not only natural hair issues, but under the whole civil rights umbrella, we're dealing with violations of various civil rights, police brutality, not diverting too much. But I think it's all connected. It's connected for the need to have laws that provide dignity and respect in the United States. So in the natural hair space, coming back home, the Crown Act has started this movement towards liberation of not only Black women, but women of color, anyone who has textured hair, the right to be free in the workspace.
Oh, wow, that's powerful. I mean, that whole right to be free. What I was reading somewhere that 80% of Black women specifically, 80%, Tracy, agree that they have to shift from their natural state to a style that fits in at the office. Why do you think the topic of hair discrimination is so important? Why are we still here?
I think because now more than ever, through video technology and through what we're seeing in the media in various areas of violations in our country, people no longer believe that we're complainers, that we are making up imaginary concerns. People now are seeing front and center that racism exists. It not only exists due to skin color, but for us as Black women, it has always existed because of our hair. A lot of us have a different texture of hair. It must also be stated, not every woman, simply because she's Black, may encounter this issue. So it's
That's
more
true.
an issue of texture than of race. But if you are a woman of color or a Black woman with textured hair, it's a real problem. It's a real problem because particularly in corporate restrictive environments, straight hair is still perceived as the preferred look. So I will even share an example.
Please.
I'm using my own personal experience. I am currently practicing law at an immigration firm, and I go to federal court almost every day representing immigrants who, of course, need to have their rights protected. When I am in the corporate lawyer space, going to court, representing clients, I would not wear this look that I'm embracing now. I'm not going to court, I'm working from home, but I'm not using a lot of Zoom, so clients are not able to see me. We speak over the phone. I feel free at home to wear this look. I'm wearing some little micro braids and I have on a hat. But when the immigration courts are open again, Cameron, and it's time to go back to court, I'll be very honest with you. I will struggle as to whether I will feel comfortable wearing micro braids in the workplace. Why? Because my coworkers may perceive me as unprofessional. Judges may question my competence. Clients might ask, are you another client? Or here's a famous one. One time I went to court and someone asked, are you the victim?
Oh, dear.
Victim of what?
Yeah, right? Exactly. I beg your pardon, right?
So I think we are still judged based on how we look. So a lot of us feel the need to conform. I do think it's a personal choice. Some women are very bold. I will tell you, Cameron, there are some sisters, and I'm speaking in our colloquial language, who come to court rocking braids, rocking whatever style they want to. That's a personal choice. For me, I feel when I'm home and I'm relaxed, I can be myself. When I'm in a corporate environment and I want to elevate and move up, I don't want my hair to be held against me. Now, why is it important that Senator Holly Mitchell and other legislators across the country are passing the Crown Act? Because I shouldn't have to struggle with that choice.
That's right.
Why am I even deciding when the courts reopen, can I wear braids? Can I wear locks? Can I wear whatever I want? I'm still the same Tracy, but I may be perceived differently based on my hair. So thanks to Senator Holly Mitchell, the Crown Act is now saying, hey, employers across the United States, if you employ more than a certain number of employees, you have to comply with the law. You cannot discriminate based on hair texture, whether it's a natural hairstyle or your natural hair.
Isn't that something though? So the Crown Act protects protective hairstyles, like you said, braids, locks, twists, bantu knots. So we can now have the power to go into corporate offices and wear that. What do corporate offices, corporate HR teams have to do now to lean in to embrace the Crown Act? And given your work with lawsuits that you may see and things that clients that are coming to you with complaints, what are you seeing? I mean, it sounds like we're still having issues with folks being discriminated against in the workplace.
We are, and let's make a quick distinction. So natural hair would be hair that is your hair. It's growing out of your scalp. It could be curly, it could be straight, it could be kinky. So that's one area of protection under the Crown Act. Another area of protection is an example of what I'm wearing now, which is a natural hairstyle. And as you mentioned, Cameron, that could include bantu knots, twists, braids, cornrows. So there is a distinction, but both types of natural hair would be protected under the Crown Act. Now, how this trickles down into the workplace, unfortunately, a lot of employers are not aware of the Crown Act. We are aware in the Black community because it's so important to us.
Yeah,
It's monumental, right? And I'm so happy that the legislation was passed on July 3rd because, hey, this is a symbol of freedom and independence. But you would be surprised if you talk about this topic outside of the Black community or cultured hair community, they might not be aware that the Crown Act exists. And this could even include employers who are supposed to be compliant by the law. So what should we do about that? What you have done, Cameron, you made sure that it is a conversation where a wider audience can hear about the Crown Act, know that it exists, know that our rights are protected, and then act accordingly. So the first key step is awareness. We need to speak about this beyond the African American community, beyond the Black community, beyond the corporate community. It needs to be an American conversation. It needs to be so prevalent that people understand the Crown Act the same way they would civil rights, the same way they would when they're discussing the CARES Act. I mean, that's so important, right? Everybody knows about the CARES Act now because of COVID-19. We want that same level of awareness for the Crown Act. So it's no excuse if an employer would then say, well, I didn't know it existed. You shouldn't have to go in as the employee and educate the employer on why I can wear this hairstyle because of the Crown Act. So with that being said, after awareness, the next step would be steps towards compliance, right? So the first step is awareness. We can increase awareness through formats such as KJLH Women's Health Expo, other community events, workshops at libraries, going into schools, going into the military, wherever we can spread the word about the Crown Act, let's do it. Social media is monumental. I love when I see the Crown Act popping up on social media.
I saw a post you did on the Crown Act.
I loved it, right? And it's ours. It's a public space that we can all share because we did this together, right? So now that we work together to make sure people know about the Crown Act, let's work together to spread the word. So awareness, using social media, using whatever format is available, that would be the second step. So awareness and marketing. Third, we need to have corporate buy-in. So maybe reaching out to more corporations. Kudos to Dove, who has definitely been a leader in this space. I don't know if you've seen it. But did you see the national commercial sponsored by Dove?
I have, and I was very emotional. Yes, I have.
Can you believe that?
The power for that, I appreciate you bringing that up because to see that commercial, just as an adult, to be able to have that reaction, imagine the power that that's going to create for a young girl to see that, right?
Yes. Because we grew up seeing Pantene, we grew up seeing the straight hair. There's nothing wrong with that. But honestly, I turned on the television and I said, wow, there's a Dove commercial and it's dedicated to our hair.
That's right.
And I also saw a Suave commercial, which is the same brand, Unilever, but we need to have that expanded times 10, times 20. So let's really push these corporations to buy into the Crown Act and sponsor it and have commercials all over the place, right? I would say the next step after awareness, marketing, mainstream commercials and media outlets buying in, why not have more partnerships within our own communities? So a lot of us are working in silos. You have this brand working on the Crown Act, this brand working on natural hair, this brand advocating, for brown Black women. But I think we need to have more cohesiveness, more unity, instead of people working together in all these different groups. Why not have an amazing Crown Act conference? Once a year.
It's a great idea.
All of these amazing people who are doing work in this space to come together. Let's make our own conference, right?
I love that.
And I think that is Oh, go ahead,
I was
please.
gonna, no, I was just gonna say I think it's a great idea. I mean, just to leverage the power of the awareness. I think that's what it
Mhm.
is. Even though this was signed into law on July 3rd of last year, this is now a new year. And like you said, very few people still know about the importance, know
Mhm.
about the strides that Senator Mitchell had to take in order to get this moved.
Yes,
And the fact that
yes,
California is the first to introduce it, which is powerful to me.
yes. Well, I'm not saying this because I love California and I'm a resident of the state, a proud resident, but California always sets the tone in this country, in my opinion, with respect to laws. And it
Mhm.
was amazing that it started here in California, then New York, and now it's being proposed across the nation.
Yeah.
So I think if we were to do a Crown Act conference, what better place to start than here in California?
I do agree. Now, I know you've written a book that deals with affirmations, and the Crown Act was implemented and created to empower women of color, right? To be able to
Yes,
give us a voice, to be able to stand up for our natural state, to be proud of the ways that we were created, right? And in our
yes.
images. But the affirmation book you wrote, tell me a little bit about that. Does that help us affirm kind of who we are? And is that something that moms can share with their daughters?
Wow, we have such synergy because I had planned to mention next, in addition to having a conference for the brands who are in the natural hair space, the Crown Act conference needs to include a space for girls. It needs to
Mm,
include a space for parents. It needs to include a space for those of us, even if we're not parents, to teach our girls to love themselves, and not only our girls, but our boys too. They have
that's right.
natural hair. They have, skin melanin, and they're dealing
That's
with
true.
issues too. So our children in general, and how that's related to natural hair affirmations, because quite frankly, that has been an area that I struggled with a lot in my life, feeling good about myself based on, hey, I'm born, as I said in my book, a brown girl in a small town in South Carolina. A lot of challenges there. But
Mhm.
I don't believe in focusing on the problem. For every problem, there's a solution.
Yeah.
What was my solution? Learning to love myself, embrace those parts of me that I'm proud of, and how can I use my talents and gifts to help others? When you focus on the beauty of your situation, rather than focusing on, woe is me, I have this kinky hair, I have this brown skin, I'm no one, you are forever disempowered. But when you focus on all the gifts, talents, what you do have, and understand that beauty is from within and it shines through you, and you can use that to help others, it's very empowering. So that's why I wrote Natural Hair Affirmations. I honestly use affirmations every day. I wake up
Mhm.
every morning. I don't know if you have to, but for me,
Yes.
I need
Yeah.
to feel and remind myself that I am a beautiful Black woman with a lot to offer this world. And
Yeah.
that is a very powerful affirmation.
It is. Tracy, tell the ladies watching today what an affirmation is, and maybe how they can write. You're starting out with what you use every morning. What are some
Yes,
simple ways that we can use? We're talking about hair, which obviously reflects
yes,
and segues into self-image. What are some tools
yes.
that someone might be watching right now?
Yes, and why affirmations are important is because how this relates to the Crown Act and civil rights and that legislation, all of this came about because of, unfortunately, our slave history in the United States and the disenfranchisement of Black people and people of color all over the world. So one way we were enslaved is through deterioration of the mind and willpower, and basically making us feel as if we are less than and not good enough. So how do you overcome that negative mindset? How do
Mhm.
you then build yourself up to say, hey, we're no longer in slavery, but every day I go out into this world, people judge me based on my hair, my skin, and unfortunately in America, in some spaces, being Black is still not good enough. So how do you
Yeah.
combat that? You combat that by affirming to yourself and whatever power you believe in, even if that own power is you, yes, I am good enough. Yes, I do have a lot to contribute to this world. And I speak in faith in my ability to believe in myself and to do good to help others. So an affirmation is a positive statement that you speak to yourself as a form of empowerment. Affirmations can also be spoken over other people. And that's where the piece comes in about parents and children. When I have kids, I cannot imagine not telling African American children or Black children or children of color every day, you are beautiful, you are worthy, you're going to make something good of your life, because kids need to hear that. Adults need to hear that. And I think the more we program our brains with positive feedback and images, such as Dove doing Crown Act commercial showing us this beautiful, versatile, diverse people, it just reinforces the power of who we are, and not as individuals, but the power of who we are as a community. And I would also like to say, one way you can start with the affirmations is of course to buy my book, Natural Hair Affirmations. But there are a lot of affirmations that you can access for free on YouTube and other social media platforms. And they usually start with I am, because you're affirming to yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup. So if you want to start using positivity, meditation, affirmations, start with I am. And then once you build yourself up, you are now able to transfer that positive energy to others.
That's very true. I appreciate you saying that. And so you hear that, ladies, for my Black, Indigenous people of color, Latinas included, you know, these are things you can do. And this really does help, because the Crown Act, I'm sure part of Senator, I'm just using my own words here. I'm sure her thinking in creating this was because she had an experience. I would venture to say, I don't know for sure, but I would venture to say that she might've had an experience in her previous, in her previous years where she might not have felt, as so many of women of color as we have had experiences against discrimination, being discriminated against. But Tracy, I do want to pivot back into the Crown Act just for a few minutes and see if you can offer recommendations for employers to know about the Crown Act law. What can an employer, maybe someone's watching right now and they're interested and they want to take something to their employer, maybe they are the owner and they're like, okay, this is important, this matters. How can I move this along so that internally I can help impact the infrastructure of the organization?
Okay, that's a great question, and two ways to do that quickly. So we spoke about awareness, marketing, and the need for community involvement. In the corporate workspace, very simply, the first way to increase awareness is to offer workshops through the HR department. So say, for example, if you are a woman of color and you're working in a corporate environment, government, education environment, doesn't matter, you can go through HR in a very non-confrontational way to say, hi, I'm not sure if you're aware of this new legislation, the Crown Act, but perhaps we could have a brown bag or some type of lunch or work seminar, HR sponsored seminar to discuss the Crown Act. So, and if I were in that particular, say for example, I work for a law firm, how would I do that? I wouldn't do it as if I'm making a demand. Okay, I would wait for the appropriate time, appropriate place, appropriate forum. So if my HR department has a way to provide suggestions or tips for upcoming lunch series or seminars, or if you can provide feedback, say if you're at one event, such as like a brown bag, and the question is asked, do you have any other topics that you could suggest? Maybe do it that way. Or if there's an affinity group within your corporation. A lot of companies have affinity groups like African American Association, Latina Association, Asian Association. It's safer to go through an affinity group or to do it in a non-confrontational way because you don't want to flag yourself as a troublemaker. So I would either approach it through, I'm at one seminar and I'm like, you know what, this has been great. I have an idea for another workshop, right? If you're attending one HR workshop, and then you could just informally mention the Crown Act or an affinity group, or if you have a higher up in your corporation who wears natural hair, right? There are a lot of Black women. I'm so proud of us. For example, Hair Love became a reality because of a Sony executive who has a natural hairstyle. So can you imagine the power of reaching out to visible advocates in a non-confrontational way? So for example, if I'm working in a corporation and there's a higher up with natural hair, braids, afro, I would do the same thing. I'd print it out, I would say, by the way, I love your hair, because I grew up in the South and we always say you get more with molasses than vinegar.
I love
Be
that.
very sweet, be very diplomatic, and if you have to be charming, if it works, do it. Authentic, of course, but we don't want to be confrontational, in my opinion. So if it's an executive who is a natural hair wearer or an advocate, that would be a safe way to approach the issue. Now, as we know, life is not always Pollyanna. Sometimes our backs are up against a wall. We have mean, nasty people in this world. And unfortunately, as Black people, we are discriminated against. If it is a situation where you are approached about your hair, if it's a situation where you're logging into Zoom and all of a sudden now you're getting HR comments, or you feel that your appearance is somehow affecting your work relationship and you think it's based on your hair, you have to let the employer know. You cannot sue an employer based on natural hair discrimination without giving notice. So before Senator Holly Mitchell passed the Crown Act, we relied on Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which did not protect hairstyles such as this, and it was very controversial. Now we can actually say if we are discriminated against, and some women are told outright their hair is a problem, okay? If that is your situation, it's terrible, it is. But thanks to Senator Holly Mitchell and others, now you can say, you know what? I appreciate your feedback, but due to the Crown Act, I should not be subjected to employment discrimination based on hair texture. Therefore, I'm giving you notice, this is how I feel based on these circumstances. And I'm going to the California Employment Discrimination Agency. I'm going to New York, because New York is the second state to pass the Crown Act, to their Employment Discrimination Agency, and I'm starting a complaint. You have to let the employer know. But I've always said this over and over again, you shouldn't do it in a way where the employer can destroy your career. In my opinion, if you can work it out, say, call a lawyer, explain to your attorney in your state the situation, try to set up some type of mediation, okay, before you go and initiate a lawsuit. And let your attorney know, I'm in a state where the Crown Act is in fact law, right? California, New York. I think recently Florida passed the Crown Act as well. So if you're in a state where the Crown Act is law, you want to reach out to an attorney, you want to tread carefully with your employer and have your attorney to mediate. The last thing you want to do is to start a fight in the workplace, right? That usually doesn't end well for us.
No. And you're so right. I appreciate you laying that out too. Like those steps, I think you heard it, ladies. Tracy just gave you all the steps you need to take and I hope no one is ever,
exactly
example.
But do you agree, Cameron, that even though we have the law, we still need to be very careful? We almost need to use it as not necessarily as a sword, but we need to use it as a defense.
I would agree with you completely.
And why do you say that? Why do you think we need to be very careful in terms of educating our employer about the act?
I think because when I'm hearing you speak about, I just think in my own life, like I'm always very careful. Like you said, don't pick fights in the workplace. It's very quick for us to be misunderstood, right? And in this moment, I think, especially in the political climate and our nation's climate right now, we always have known that people of color, we always have known we've been lit, right? But now the nation is finally really understanding and embracing and wanting to hear, right? We have attention now, really being able to share our story, but things can still get misconstrued. Things can still be twisted. And so that's my concern. And like you said, using the Crown Act as almost a defense is like, I'm so happy that we have it. But at the same time, the education, I love that you hit on that because we're going to continue to have to do that because I can guarantee someone is going to either twist it, not want to embrace it. And so that's the part where I'm glad you kind of leaned into the steps because although we have this protection, we still need to be mindful.
And then the final step to that is after, okay, say for example, if a person is in a hostile work environment, their hair is clearly a problem, the Crown Act is a defense. It is a source of protection. You reached out to an attorney in your state to consult. try to go through mediation first. If mediation doesn't work, then you have no choice but to go down the road of a lawsuit. Usually these cases settle out of court. Not too many corporations, especially in the current environment, wants to be deemed as a racist organization. So a lot of entities will settle out of court, but there is still a concern of creating a public document. So when you go to look for work elsewhere, you wouldn't want the employer to use that against you. But I do think that there are employers who are aware of the Crown Act. We need more commercials. We need more forums like this. And I like what you just said. We need to seize this opportunity. Corporations are now wanting to give us money, time, and attention. We'll take it to support the Crown Act. We will take your money. Donate for these causes. And it's not in a selfish way. We're all about the common good. So now that we have this opportunity in America for corporations to work with us, collaboration to combat racism includes the Crown Act.
That's so true. Oh my goodness. Well, ladies, you have heard it. First, you've heard it clear from this beautiful attorney, Tracy Sanders. Tracy, my last question to you, and I'm so full because I feel like I've received so much today. And this is so important for us, right? We need the knowledge. We need to take that knowledge and tuck it in our back pocket and always have it. My last question, I think, for you today is, you could tell your 8-year-old self anything. You are so accomplished and you have a beautiful platform to help empower women of all shades. What would you tell yourself, knowing what you know now, at 8 years old? What would you tell your 8-year-old self?
I would tell my 8-year-old self an affirmation. I am proud of you and keep moving forward.
Well, you heard it first. Like I said, ladies, thank you so much, Tracy, for joining us today for what is an amazing conversation. And I love the way you opened, so I will close that way. Thank you so much to Senator Holly Mitchell for caring enough about the community and about women of all walks of life to be able to implement the Crown Act. What a pioneering trailblazer. And we're so blessed to be able to have this protection that recognizes the beauty in which we were created. So Tracy, thank you again for your time. Ladies, we encourage you to continue joining us here for the 20th annual KJLH Women's Health Expo. This was an important conversation, and you're going to see even more important conversations as well throughout the day.
Thanks, Cam and Tracy. I appreciate you so much. And it's a pleasure to be with you to talk about one of my favorite topics, Black women and our right to wear our hair the way we choose. So, you know, the Crown Act was really an amazing, really group effort. I happen to be attending the National Organization of Black Elected Legislative Women. I'm active member of this group of Black female state legislators from across the country. And we gather once a year to share ideas about policy and really just form a bond, a sisterhood in our shared experience of policymaking across this country. And at the closing breakfast, there was this dynamic speaker, this sister, A.C. Eggleston Bracey, COO of Unilever, who did this presentation about this research they had done through the Dove brand about Black women and our attitude about our own hair. And I was both surprised and not surprised at the results of the survey. And she basically challenged this room full of policymakers to consider introducing resolutions across the country in our various state houses addressing natural hair and our ability to wear our natural hair in the workplace. Well, I went up, gave her my card, said, you know, I've been locked now, this year will be going on 16 years. And I think I'm the perfect kind of spokesperson, if you will. California legislature, the 5th largest economy in the world. What a great place to start the conversation about this new angle on our natural hair movement. Fast forward 1 month later, we all saw the young man, the young wrestler in New Jersey, who was viciously attacked on the wrestling mat during that competition. And my staff and I realized that it was not just protecting people in the workplace, but it was protecting our students in school. I'd also been reading over the years a number of research studies about the disproportionate number of Black girls that are suspended or expelled from school. And one of the primary criteria is because of them wearing their hair and box braids or twists to school, and how there was this trend nationwide for schools to have dress codes that included appropriate hairstyles. That was the straw that broke the proverbial camel's back, and SB 188 was born. We even picked the bill number 188 because eights are curvy like the coils in our hair. So I was proud to introduce the Crown Act. And CROWN, if you didn't know, is an acronym that stands for Creating a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair. This has been an amazing partnership. The CROWN Coalition was born out of this bill that has members like the Urban League, Western Center on Law and Poverty, the Links, Courage Campaign, any number of amazing national advocacy organizations, again, who are focused on our natural hair. And let me be clear, you know, from my perspective, the whole point of the bill was about choice. This is not throwing shade at my sisters who choose to straighten their hair, not at all. The point was that Black women were the only group of women who could be told at work or school how to wear your hair. And so what we did was we created a protected class for natural hair. We acknowledge the fact that the way our hair grows is a race-based trait. And so just like your age, your gender, your race, your sexual orientation, your religion are all protected categories under employment, fair employment and housing law, natural hair, the way our hair grows naturally, is a part of that protected class. And therefore, our natural hair styles are protected as well. What does that mean, Senator Mitchell? Well, what that means is you can no longer be told by your employer that your locks, twists, or braids can't be worn at work. You can no longer not get a promotion, be fired, not hired, and certainly at public schools, public charter schools, cannot have dress codes that prevent these hairstyles. California was the first state in the nation when Governor Newsom signed the bill July 3rd, which I call our Hair Independence Day of last year, 2019. We just celebrated the 1-year anniversary. And in this year, 7 additional states have also introduced and passed Crown Acts into law. There are 2 bills at the congressional level. If it happens there, it's wonderful. It will become law all across the country. But until then, we will continue our state-by-state strategy. And if you would like to support the Crown Act across the country, just Google the Crown Act. There's a petition you can sign to lend your name, your voice, your story to the amazing movement of empowerment and personal choice that allows us to wear our natural hair to work and school. Again, thank you so much for your support of the Crown Act and inviting me to be with you today.
The KJLH 20th Annual Women's Health Expo at KJLHradio.com. Presented virtually by Rasta Free and Radio Free, KJLH.